Amen. Amen. You may be seated. All right, don't put the slides away. Have them ready. I might want you to go back through the slides. Okay? All right, so I think I want to say a few things that I want to go through that were actually in the slides that we were looking at. But one of the things I want to do is, as always, is remind us, okay, so he gives us the appointments, the times, these markings of time. We have feasts, we have new moons, we've got the Shemitah year count, we've got the Jubilee year count. These are all markings of time. The weekly Shabbat. And these markings of time are to help us to know where we are in time, in his time, in a place that he created to have this thing called time. And we have a limited amount of it, and he wants us to be aware as it passes and as we move through this thing called time, where we are. And so right now we're in that time between Shavuot and trumpets, okay? And so we're in this new moon of the 4th month, going towards trumpets, which is the new moon of the 7th month. Okay, so we're working these, so time is moving in that way. One of the encouragements that I give you each time we go through this is that I want you to be encouraged that as we mark time, there's a very specific purpose to that. Okay, the purpose is all the things I just said, but also so that you know you are here now and you're looking forward, and hopefully as far as looking backward, that's just for lessons learned. Okay, we're like turning a page. This is like turning a new page, and as you move on to the new page, you don't need to bring stuff from the other pages with you, but you might have wanted to learn a few things from those other pages, okay? You know what, if you're reading a book, I don't think I've ever said this before, so I think it's an interesting maybe way to put it. If you're reading a book, and that book has a plot line that's going along, it's kind of helpful to remember the plot line that's going along. But it'd be really hard to read chapter 5 if all the words from chapters 3, 4, and 2 and whatever are in chapter 5. It would make it really hard for you to read whatever's happening in chapter 5, wouldn't it? If the things that happen in the other chapters is written on top of it and all jumbled together. That's kind of what you're doing in your head a lot of the time, when you don't let the past be the past. All right, so it's very important. So I want to encourage you that these are opportunities to examine yourself. Where are you in your relationships? Your vertical ones, your horizontal ones, right? The two great commands. Where are you in terms of comparing yourself only to yourself and to the Messiah, not to everybody else? What have you learned in the last month, right? We had one new moon, we had the 3rd new moon, and now we're into the 4th new moon. So what did you learn in that month? What did you learn during Sivan? And now taking that forward, okay? And so as we go forward, now we take what we learned and we optimistically, with hope and with excitement and encouragement, with emunah, with faith, we look forward to moving through this new month so that we arrive at the next one, a little bit further along on the path. Amen? Amen? And as always, I want to encourage you to never forget that he called you exactly where you were when he called you, under the consequences, circumstances, or whatever words you want to use for, just how whatever messed up you were where you were, knowing full well that from that point, you could get there. The same holds true every day since. Even if you maybe went backwards a little bit, because he already knew you might go backwards a little bit. And so you can get there from here, okay? So I want it to be, like in the mall map, it says you are here. The Yahweh map says you are here, but you can get over here from where you are. Okay, you can get there. Now, it doesn't say he's going to pick you up and lift you up and plop you over there. Okay? You have to actually do what we call, and Scripture calls, walk. Walk in all his ways, it says in Deuteronomy 10:12. You have to walk in all his ways. So you're going to have to walk this out. Yeshua says in John that he is the way. This is the way we walk. We walk like he walked. So you can get there. You can walk this out. You have it in you, even if you can't see it. Look, you know what's funny? I know we all, I could ask for hands. I don't know if it really would matter. But I know we all really believe that at some point we're going to be in the kingdom. Is that not true? Now, do you believe you're going to be the same person you are now at that point? No. Of course not. Okay, so you're not going to be the same person you are now, but you're going to get there. Okay, so what's going to happen between now and there? Change. Is change always fun? No. Sometimes. Is change always easy? No. Sometimes. I mean, it has all kinds of different grades of difficulty. Some things you changed very easily when you came into this. Some things were not so simple. And now we're looking at doing the harder stuff, dealing with changing the inside. But you can do all these things. I just want you to really think about it and understand that if you already know and believe that you will be this other person, why not believe, this is really going to be hard for some of you. Why not believe you can be that person now? Why not believe that you can be that person now? If you are a life coach, personal development person, a psychologist, whatever it is, a lot of times you may use a technique of helping people to visualize and even write out affirmations of the person you want to be. And the way this works is that you would be asked to write down a description of you in the future as if it's already true, if you would become the person you want to become. How would you think? How would you act? What would you be doing? How would you feel? Well, you already know where you're going. And you know the type of person generally that you'll need to become to be that. Why not start believing you could be that now? Why wait till then? Now, that doesn't mean you can start being it tomorrow, but it means you can start working in that direction. But you have to have the belief. Instead of thinking some sort of miraculous different change, you're going to wake up one day and just be different. That's not the way it works. But you need to believe that you can do this. And so I'd like you to start picturing yourself, because a lot of times I think we don't really spend much time thinking about this. Think about what type of person you might actually have to become to be successful in the kingdom. How would you treat people? How would you feel about the way people treat you? How would you feel about things that go around you? How would you feel? What actions should you be taking? What's your level of I don't know how do I want to put this. Self-worth, self-confidence, self-esteem. In other words, how you feel about you. Because I have a bunch of you out there that feel really not a whole lot of good stuff about yourselves. But do you think you'll feel that way when you're going into the kingdom? You're like, oh, of course not. Well, you got to make that journey, though, from the person you are now to the person you're going to become. See, now, I know we've talked about a lot this idea that I'm mostly focused on doing what I can to help you get from point A to point B. I'm going to change that a little bit. That was the simplicity that I could give you before you were ready mentally and emotionally to really take the journey more fully. It's kind of like when Yeshua said, I came to give you things in the spirit of how it was intended, not just the mechanics of it. It's simple enough to know not to commit adultery or not to murder, he says, but it's more complex than that. It's a thought process, it's a heart, it's an approach, it's a mindset, right? So I'm seeing my role, and Abba's been showing me this now for a little while, as yes, to help you have everything you need to get from where you are to that kingdom experience. Okay, to get there to the well done, good and trustworthy servant. Enter into the joy of your master. But now it's becoming more and more apparent that a lot more of it is internal and not mechanical. Okay? Because it's not just figuring out the behavioral patterns and the mechanics of Torah keeping, Torah observance, the do's and the don'ts. But it's how you do them, how you go about not doing them. Doing something reluctantly or begrudgingly isn't going to work. Not doing something, again, reluctantly and begrudgingly because you really wanted to do it isn't going to work. And so I want to make sure we're understanding that transforming into Yeshua isn't just figuring out how to make decisions like him, but it's figuring out how to make decisions like him. Was that too subtle? It's not just about trying to figure out how to make choices that he made, but understand how he made those choices. What was he thinking in order to make those decisions? What was he feeling in order to make those decisions? because I want you to be really working on the most important part of you that's going to be going on this journey, which is you. Okay? And a lot of you, forget about wanting to live with others together. You can hardly live with yourselves. Really, I'm not saying that as a joke. I mean, there's a lot of you who really suffer in a real, I mean suffering in a real sense. Being here, just being you. And that's fixable. But you have to have that hope. I mean, if you believe you can be in the kingdom, then you should be able to believe that you can feel differently about being you. You should be able to believe differently about all the things that are going on in the now, because it's easy, I guess, to some degree to believe in some far-off time that you don't know when it is and what it's going to look like and just figure, well, the Creator's going to handle it. Well, He is. He's giving you teachers like me and people to help you along the way to work on you. And you becoming, look, we haven't talked about this as much as I used to years ago. Years ago, the main focus that He gave me was about you becoming the type of person He wants to live with forever. Then it became about building the forever kingdom or forever community, preparing to live in that community. It became about going from point A to point B. It never left the other item behind, but we just didn't talk about it as much. Years ago, people would ask me things like, well, you know, I guess that's okay, but really, is it a salvation issue? Whatever it is we were talking about, right? They'd be like, is that a salvation issue? And so I approached, and you've heard me talk about this, a lot of you. I approached the Father, and I said, are there any salvation? What is that anyway? Is there such a thing as a salvation issue? Because people arbitrarily decide this piece of Torah is not so important because it's not a salvation issue. This one over here is a salvation issue. For some of you, the calendar is a salvation issue. For others, it's not. For some of you, the Sabbath is. For some of you, it's not. We have all these arbitrary decisions as to what is and what's not because, quite frankly, let me pull this out. You know, in here, it doesn't say. It doesn't say that certain pieces of Torah are salvation issues, other isn't. Okay? Now, I want you to know that there are no salvation issues. Okay? Salvation was provided to you, potentially. You know, the opportunity to live forever requires salvation. Salvation is not living forever. Salvation is what allows that to happen. Listen to the teaching, are you saved? All right? So there are no salvation issues. It was already done, paid for, and provided by Yeshua when He resurrected. He died and was resurrected, and that made salvation available to everyone that ever lived. But there are reward issues. Forever is a reward. Living forever in the kingdom is a reward. You know, Paul says to run to receive the crown of life. We have a teaching, right? Endure and receive the crown of life. And so the question about salvation issues really is the person saying, is this going to keep me out of the kingdom? Isn't that what they're really asking? And so the answer to the question is, there's really one issue. Now, just like Yeshua, and I'm trying to be like my teacher, right? Yeshua would be my teacher, and I said, I want to be like a disciple should be. So I'm going to speak a little bit cryptically, but hopefully very clear. When they asked Yeshua what you have to do to have eternal life, He said, keep the commandments. They said, which ones? He only named two. He said, love the Creator and love your neighbor. But He didn't mean just two, did He? He meant all of the commandments that apply to loving your Creator and all the commandments that apply to loving each other. Okay, the Jews have done their own arbitrary, research or whatever they did in putting things together, come up with 613 of them. I'm not saying that's how many there are. I'm saying that's what they did in their effort to figure out what is all connected to the two. Now, not that they're following what Yeshua said, but I'm saying they understood that there was commandments about our interaction vertically and commandments regarding our actions horizontally. Okay? So I'm going to bring this down to one. All right? And the answer I got from him was, are you becoming? What is becoming? It means changing, transforming, and becoming something. In other words, not what you are now, but what are you becoming? All right? So are you becoming the type of person that the Creator wants to spend forever with? Because I can promise you, nothing you do obligates Him to do that. Do you understand that? You can't go at Judgment Day and say, well, with your arms crossed probably, well, I kept the Sabbath and I ate clean and I did all these things, you got to let me in. I think there may be a little bit more criteria just in the mechanics. Because can't we all agree that you can be somewhat of an unpleasant person to be nice, but you can be an unpleasant person and keep all the commandments? Okay? You can eat properly and be unpleasant. You can keep Sabbath and feast and be unpleasant. There's all kinds of things you could do. When the temple existed, you could have brought your offerings and, you could certainly have looked like you were sucking on a pickle your whole life. Billy likes when I make the faces, so, But it's the person. And this is kind of at the heart of a lot of the teaching I did, especially in the beginning, was helping you understand that it's about us becoming the only person we know that he would like to spend forever with, the Father we're talking about, is the Son. Which is why we are given the encouragement to become like him. Can we agree on that? All right, Yeshua is the only one we know for sure the Father wants to spend forever with and already has been spending forever with up to this point. And so we, if we become like him, will be the type of people he would like to spend forever with. And some of you might be fighting this in your head because you don't want it to be about that and everything else. And you were taught all kinds of other stuff all your life. I get that. But I want you to just think about this, because can we all agree that the Creator, that the Father himself is just a little bit smarter than you? Okay? We all agree. I mean, that's like easy, right? Okay, so he's smarter. Okay, you call it a no-brainer, so even if you had no brain, you could figure that out, right? All right, so the Father's smarter than us. But yet, you, as not as smart as him, I'll be nice, instead of saying as dumb as we are, okay, as not even close to him in wisdom and intelligence and all the other things that you would think of, the brilliance of him, even us, these flawed human beings, would never, if you had that power and that opportunity to spend forever with people, you would never let just anybody in. You would have some sort of a criteria. You'd have a measuring stick. Now, you may not like his, but what would yours be? Do you have a better one? I mean, he wants to spend forever with those who trust him. That's what the obedience shows. We don't just obey because we're afraid of him. We obey because we trust that obedience brings blessing. Obedience also brings transformation. Obedience keeps us safe. Look, it's the same stuff that's on the back of my shirt, right? What does the Torah do? It says it blesses us, it keeps us safe, and it transforms us. So what does that all demonstrate? Trust. He wants to spend forever with those who will trust him. When I say trust him, I mean implicitly and completely without hesitation. Like Abraham did with his son. He trusted that it would be okay somehow. When the father said, take your son up and offer him. That's, I think, a good criteria, I often play the game, in a little joke game, where I say, okay, if you had the power to live forever and choose whoever else you wanted, of course, the part I just talked about would be a part of that, like what kind of measuring stick would you have? But I asked the other question is, well, how many people right now would you say would be on your list of people you would feel comfortable living forever with? Very few, I'm sure. And not only that, sadly, probably not most of the people even in this room. And we're all supposed to be looking forward to spending forever with each other. And you wouldn't even make each other's lists. Then I asked the scarier question, how many people's lists do you think you'd be on? Do you think many people would put you on their list of wanting you to be there with them? Well, the only list that matters is the Father's. Not that he has a list, but he's the one that gets to choose. And Judgment Day isn't about like a final exam and see if you get a passing grade. I think Christianity kind of makes it seem that way. Okay? It's not a pass-fail type of grade. Okay? He's going to look at you and decide, do I want to give you forever with me? Will I enjoy your company? Will I have confidence that I can trust you? Will you listen when I tell you stuff? instruct you? Will you be submissive when you might not agree right up front? Because not saying just because we get in the kingdom, automatically we're going to like and agree to everything, but will you be able to submit? See, this journey, which we're now in another new month turning the page to do this journey is about practicing doing those things. And he gives us human beings to do it with. He says, go ahead and play with this for a while, and then we'll see if you're ready to move up to the bigger level. And we're not very good at this a lot of the time. But I want to encourage you that that's okay, because if you want to, you can get good at it. And the reason I know that you can is because he picked you at this point. And he wouldn't call you if you couldn't get there. All right, so let me add a little piece to this then. This is making sense so far? Okay. I'm going to add a little piece to this. Well, we talked about over the last couple of weeks this idea of a mindset. And today I got a new thought about that. All right, so the way I gave you the idea of mindset had to do with you have the thinking part. That's the thoughts, ideas, logic, reason, rational part of it, the rational part of that, the objective, okay? And then you have the heart part, the emotions, the desires, the subjective, okay? Sometimes irrational, illogical. And these things work together. Now, when they work together, usually they're not in harmony, which means one is stronger than the other. The stronger one drives the bus. Okay? So if your thought is strong enough, it will override an irrational emotion. It'll override an irrational desire or an illogical desire, a wrong thought. Okay, or not a wrong thought, a wrong desire. So that's important. Now the other way of it too is you can have wrong thoughts, you can have other things that are going on in your head, and a strong enough desire can override that also in a good way. Because you can have some wrong thoughts and then you have this desire that says, no, but I want to be pleasing in Abba's sight. So you have this stuff that's going on. So the word set is what I want to focus on here, the mind set. It'd be like if you were doing a targeting system in the military, and you put all of the information into the targeting system, and then you hit the button that sets it, so it's locked in. So your mindset is actually a choice. You can choose the mix between your head and your heart. And you can set that. You know, we're told to set our mind on things above. So remember, when we talk about the mindset is something that either happens by default or you can choose to do, and it's the mix between thought and emotion. And emotion, we're talking about not just I'm happy, I'm sad. I'm talking about I want, I don't want. I like, I don't like. All your preferences, all your desires, all your cravings, all of the things that you want to avoid, okay, all that emotion is going to affect whether or not you do something. You have a thought to do something, okay? So your thought is, I'm going to start keeping the Sabbath. You may have an emotional response to, yeah, but if I do that, I'll lose family members over it. If I do that, I'll do, whatever it is. You may have also an emotion that says, that's going to be exciting because I'm going to be pleasing to the Father. I mean, you can have all kinds of different emotional responses, positive and negative. But you have to have a third element. Remember I talked about sort of you being the observer. I don't want to sound all new agey or whatever, but you have to understand that you have to be able to observe yourself. The driver really should be you, not the thoughts and not the emotions, but you watching them play out and then making your own choices. You have a thought, maybe a good one, may not be a good one. You have some desires, maybe good ones, may not be good ones. There has to be another part of you that's watching this play out and refereeing the thing. The decision maker. You have to be that third element of you, not just letting these two play it out and you're just sitting there in the back seat going wherever whoever wins drives. Was that too much? I want you to really think about what I just said. You might want to go back and re-listen to this. You have spent most of your life letting one or the other, just whoever wins drives. And look at where that's gotten you so far. And I'm not saying that in a sarcastic way, because some of where it's gotten you has been good. Not all of it though, right? But sometimes, when you get in your car and you're at work and you're driving home, or vice versa, how many times do you show up where you show up and don't even remember how you got there? All the time, right? I mean, it happens on a regular enough basis. Why? Because you don't need to be observing. You're on autopilot at that point. How many times have you ended up in a place in a relationship and you think, how in the world did I get here? I don't mean in the relationship itself. How did the relationship go so sideways and so bad, or so whatever it did? And because you didn't drive. You let the other stuff drive. Okay? You need to sit back and go, okay, the brain came up with a thought. Okay, I need to now look at that. Oh, my heart wants this. Okay, I'll consider that too. And you need to rationally consider all those things as you kind of balance that out as to make decisions. The head can't make them, the heart can't make them, because that will sometimes and often enough go badly. Not always. You've made a lot of good decisions, and some of them were heart-driven and some of them were head-driven. But I want you to really think about this going into this new moon, this new month, about trying to be much more aware and pay attention to how you make decisions. Now, you, the observer, are going to notice that there are imbalances between the heart and the head in certain situations. When the heart doesn't have enough passion and desire for something that you agree with the head about, that you really want to do or think is a good idea, or don't want to do and think it's a bad idea, but the heart wants to go the other way, but you don't have enough strength, then you need to work on the heart. If you're observing and find that it's the other way around, the heart is just overpowering the head, then you got to work on the head. You got to build strength in the thought process. Because you can't just tell whichever one to shut up and tell the other one to drive. It has to be because the one that's stronger will drive. So in case I wasn't clear about that, I think it's important that I clarify that. So the observer doesn't just decide, I don't care how strong my heart is right now, we're going to do what the head says. No, doesn't work. You can't get that to work. It's a disconnect internally. So you need to do is you need to strengthen the one that's weak, and you need to calm down the one that's too strong. And it could be either one, right? Maybe you need more desire for something, because a lot of stuff, remember I said the stuff that you don't do that you know you should do is because you don't want to. You just don't want to do it. And guess what? This is what Paul says when he says the things I want to do, I don't do, because he's losing the battle between his mind and his heart. And then the same thing the other way around. I said all that stuff you do that you know you shouldn't do, and you do it anyway, is because you want to. You sickos. Okay? It's because you want to do it. And all your thoughts aren't going to fix that until you make the thoughts have more power and you work on changing or altering or diminishing the desire. Which, that's a work right there. I mean, that's plenty to keep you busy. But at least now you understand, hopefully, how it works, how it functions. This is the secret. This is the key. It's not complicated. It's just not easy. Okay? There's nothing complex about it. It's just not easy to do. Because we're very strong-willed and strong-headed. We have really powerful thoughts sometimes, or we're very strong in our emotions. And it's hard for us to go against the stronger one that we don't want to go in the line with. Because sometimes our thoughts are the ones that are wrong. Sometimes our emotions are the ones that are wrong. It doesn't matter. If it's strong enough, we tend to give in and let the other, whichever one is strong, drive. You can't do that. That goes sideways. It doesn't work. It ends up in a ditch. It's not going to transform you into him. See, he doesn't say these things, but he does. When he says, I only do what my Father says, he can't do that unless he has this under control. Do you understand? Because we know that he didn't always want to do it, because he said, Father, if possible, to take this cup from me. But what did he say? But nevertheless, your will be done. So he had an emotion. He was in a flesh suit. He had emotions. And he said, this isn't going to be fun. They are going to hurt me bad. Father, is there any other way to do this? I'm not looking forward to the pain. Some of you in your lives have that same problem. You know something's coming, and it doesn't look like it's avoidable, and you know it is not going to be good. It's not going to be fun. But can you say what Yeshua said, nevertheless, your will be done? Because he was going to make sure that the thought overrode the heart. Emotionally, he said, I'd rather not do this. Not I'd rather not do my whole thing. I'd rather do it a different way. And you can understand that, because now that he was in a flesh suit, knew what pain felt like. I'm sure he hurt himself and injured himself and stubbed his toe and, as a carpenter, hit his thumb with a hammer or something. I mean, he knew what pain was, and he knew the kind of pain he was about to get was beyond experience. But he was in the driver's seat, though, because he had a thought and an emotion. The thought was, I know this is what the Father says I have to go do. The emotion is just to ask at least, is there another way to do it? And I don't think he was asking not to go through it. I think he was just saying, is there any other way to do this? I don't think he didn't want to do it. He said, no greater thing can a person do than lay down their life for their brother. So he knew, but I think he might have been talking about the process. But I'm trying to explain to you what was going on, even though it's not in the verse. Okay, he had a thought. He already knew what the Father had told him in his head was going to happen. He'd already told the apostles, right? We're going to go to Jerusalem, they're going to arrest me, and they're going to kill me. But he also had an emotion. They were not lined up. But yet, you see, he had peace with it, because the Father never responded to it that way. So he said, okay, we're going to go this way. And then he went forward. Notice how he went forward. Completely at peace with where he decided where it was going to go. He said, I could call a legion of angels. Not going to do it. I could speak out as you're doing all the things to me. Not going to do it. Because this is what he said was going to happen. And I'm not going to resist it. I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to let it play through. And I'm going to go and play my part as best I can. I'm going to do my role. Does that kind of work for everybody? Do you understand that? Now understand that this affects all your relationships. Husband and wife, almost all your conflicts is when one of the person's emotional place and their thoughts and the way they perceive things and see doesn't match up with the other person's. And then we get emotionally driven. Think of it this way. I'm going to give you an example. Not a specific one, but a conceptual example. How many of you have been married a few minutes, or a lot of years? It really is more than a lot of years. If it's a few minutes, you probably haven't experienced this. But if you've been married for a good number of years, you probably have experienced at least once or 20 times something that either you or your spouse had said, I really would like you to do this or not do this. Something simple, it could be putting the toothpaste cap on or whatever it is, right? And yet you, the one, you or them, which it depends on which way it goes. Let's use the example that it's you that really doesn't like the toothpaste cap off, and you've mentioned it a lot of times, and for some reason, the spouse doesn't do it. Do you know why they're not doing it? Because in their mind, it never connected that was important, because it's not important to them, and there's not a connection in the head or the heart that this is something that needs to be done. And you react as if they're being very disrespectful and don't care and everything else. But there's a disconnect in the communication. Their perspective and yours doesn't match. Okay? And I guess maybe we'll need to talk about that for a minute, because after all, I already just talking for 45 minutes. What is perspective? Okay, perspective is, I'm going to use the example through what I've just been teaching you. Let's use the stuff I just gave you. This is all new stuff. Never told anybody any of this before, okay? Perspective is how you see things through whichever one is winning the battle, your mind or your heart. Does it make sense? The way you perceive everything is based on who's doing the perceiving. Is your desires in your heart perceiving? Or are your thoughts perceiving? Or even better, are you and not either one of those two perceiving? Who's driving at that moment? You're experiencing something. And that experience is always going to go through your perspective, your perception of what's happening. Which is why you can read lots of accounts about an event and they don't all match exactly right, because each person is only seeing the parts that their driver is focused on. Okay? Okay, you go to a party. I go to the same party, so do 5 other people go to the same party. You're going to the party because you're expecting fantastic music. I'm going to the party because I heard the food was going to be good. And the third person is going there to meet a bunch of people. Okay? Now, if the food is great, I'm going to think the party was amazing. Even if the music was terrible and the people were whatever. But what I'm looking for, right, my perspective is this is about that. And if you were looking for music, you might have thought, but this is a terrible party. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? It's a great party. Well, but I was looking for food. You were looking for music. You see? And it's really about that. Now imagine you set your mind before you go to the party. What are you looking for? I'm looking for anything that comes. I'm open to it. I'm looking forward to being surprised and excited about whatever may be there. And so therefore, no matter what happens, it's going to be great. If the food's no good, it's okay. If the music's no good, it's okay. I mean, something will happen that I'll say, I'm glad I was there. I learned something. I experienced something. I met somebody. I had a great conversation, or whatever it is. It's all about perspective. And so you can alter your perspective by setting your mindset. You can come to services. Some of you have come to services and had a great time. Other people came to the same service and hated it because it had to do with where their head was at and their heart was at before they got here, their mindset. If you had a lousy mindset when you got here, you weren't going to have a good service because you're already looking. Okay, next piece of the puzzle. Once you have a mindset, you could have one by default, right? Or you could choose one. The way your mind works is to find all ways to validate the mindset. So if you have a mindset, this place is lousy, you're going to find every reason that's even remotely possible to justify that you were right about the idea that it was lousy. You're looking for it. Because there's a part of your mind that always wants to prove you right. Did you ever, look for something, you couldn't find it, talk to your spouse about where it is, the spouse says, well, it's over there, and you already don't want to get up, you don't want to look, you're already frustrated, so you walk in the room, you look everywhere, you can't find it, your spouse walks right over and goes, here, it was right in front of you, and you're like, how is that possible? My father used to say, if it had teeth, it would have bit you, right? I mean, literally, right open on the counter, boom, there's your phone that you were looking for. But you had already convinced your mind that you can't find it. So your mind ignored it. Anybody have those kind of experiences? You know what I'm talking about. And do you ever wonder, how is that possible? Because your brain and the way it functions literally can blind you. So you don't see something literally right in front of you. Well, I can't find it. And the person walks right over, straight to it, right where they said it was, and goes, and you look so embarrassed, like, So what do? You snap at them because now you're embarrassed. How dare you make me look stupid? No, you made yourself look stupid. What can you do? You didn't need any help. You did stupid all on your own without no problem. Take what I just gave you, and I just gave you a lot of stuff, and we'll open up, with some questions and comments and stuff. But take what I gave you, all right? So people get it. Janet's already jumping out of her chair. Take what I gave you and try to apply some of this stuff. You're going to have to go back and listen to it plenty of times, and try to apply it over the next 30 days to the next moon and see what that can do for you. Because this was very, very, very useless if you don't do anything with it. It was interesting. It was like, oh, that sounded interesting. But it could be incredibly transformative and powerful if you try it. Just try understanding it and looking at it in your own life and understand this is the battlefield, not of the mind, but it's the battlefield of the mindset, the heart and mind combination. Okay? All right. So I hope that blesses you. Rosh Chodesh Sameach. We'll open up now for some questions. Hope that was good. And don't ask me what I said. I don't know. I don't have any notes. I just started talking. So I'll have to go back myself and look it up. Okay? You can bring the mic around.
Thank you,
All right.
Rabbi. That was awesome. When you were talking about the battle between the mind, the thoughts, beliefs, and the emotions, and how we have to be the third entity, like trying to make the right decision, right? Not necessarily going with the strongest voice, but really with what is right to do, right? What's the next right thing to do? So I've been lately.
Hold on. I just got an insight to make this a little easier. It's not going to still ask your question, but okay, you are not your thoughts. They're your thoughts, but that's not you. You are not your emotions. They're your emotions, but they're not you. It's you that I want to be observing the thoughts. Just to kind of clarify it a little bit, did that help? It's you observing your thoughts and observing your emotions. You are not either of those. They're yours, but that's not you. I want you to be observing what's going on in your head. I want you. So I know this idea of an observer and everything is too maybe esoteric, the idea. Let me just make it simpler. The thoughts and the emotions, while they're yours, are not you. Okay? You need to be observing and then grabbing a hold of the control to make sure that those things are in the right balance. Okay, now go ahead.
So I just wanted to add a third element, which is something that I've been listening to lately, last 2-3 days, which is the actual speech, like saying out loud. Like when you have, if I have a negative thought, sometimes it can get, I tell this to my clients, sometimes if it's an intrusive thought, it can really be hard to challenge that and replace it right on the spot because they may keep coming back. But what I found useful, and I've been applying that lately in myself, is to say out loud what I really want to believe and the thought that I really want to embrace so that I can really shut my mind right up so that I can truly, like I said, really embrace that new thought that it's the one that and also we can do that with the emotions, right? If I'm being impatient, instead of being impatient, I can tell myself, I am patient. If I want to be kind, I am kind. The things that I really want to become is what I speak. And I think that that's good because then I'm listening to myself, but I'm also, my mind, my thoughts are listening and hopefully changing that piece too.
Okay, excellent. So let me kind of add some detail to that because this is exactly one of the things that I give people when I tell them when you're writing that stuff out, you could be, but if you are that, how do you get there? Well, you have to reprogram your mind. And you reprogram your mind through the programming tools that programmed it in the first place. So how did your mind get programmed in the first place? Through like a computer, through its inputs, right? You program something by inputs. So what are the inputs that you have? You hear and you see. I mean, you also smell and taste and everything else. But I'm talking about generally for the ideas and thoughts and things, it's about what you hear and what you see. So you're reading stuff, or you're seeing and watching things happen, or you're hearing things. Okay? So when you say it out loud, you're helping reprogram because you're hearing yourself say it. If you write stuff down and you read it out loud, now you're seeing it and you're hearing it. And so these are all ways to program. So doing what Janet said, I'm giving you the way to do it. I'm explaining how that actually plays in. It's about the programming. Okay, you're resetting the program because you were programmed by what people said in your life, and you believed or didn't believe what they said. Some things you believed and some things you didn't believe. Some things you should have believed and didn't. Some things you should never believe, but you did. But those things that were experienced through your inputs are why you are exactly where you are today, because those are the inputs that you took in. And by the way, you can have two children experiencing the exact same experiences, and they may not receive the inputs the same way. Okay? But understand that you are now choosing to understand this is the way you become what you become, and do it on purpose and not by default. Just not all willy-nilly as things go along. Okay? But you're going to do it purposefully. Choose what you're going to be programming in. So like I'm in a situation and I might have to remind myself, no, I'm patient, I'm kind. What are the things that Janet was saying, right? And so maybe the thing that you want to do or you're thinking about doing, maybe write it down and look at it and read it out loud and go, wait, that doesn't sound so good. I don't think that's what I want to do. It's like I've said to some people, look, if you want to text and you want to make all these posts, go ahead and write them somewhere, not where it can be posted, and then look at it and realize, wow, do I really want to put that out in a let the you look at it, not the emotion that wrote it or the thought that wrote it or the combination of the two, because sometimes they can conspire together. A wrong thought with wrong emotion is really powerful, okay? Right thought, right emotion gets right result. And so maybe you got to write it out just so you can see it. But write it out someplace that doesn't have an accidentally, I hit the send button and now it's posted. All right? All right, thank you. That was good. Anybody else? Okay, Shannon?
Well, my question is based on, you're trying to look, you trying to be the observer, the you look at your mind and your heart. And it's kind of hard because you can't sometimes, you don't know who you are, like what's that part of you that's actually you, how to look past that. And I've noticed, like, I don't know if this is it, but like, when you think something, like you're about to do something, but you have an inner voice saying, maybe you shouldn't do it, but it's so small, you somehow easily ignore it, and then you do that thing, and then you prove yourself wrong. And I just wonder, is that inner voice somehow really you trying to tell your mind or your heart, no, maybe not?
Okay, it could be. But okay, let's kind of play that thing through. This is a good example. First of all, you already know how to be the you part, the observer part, because it's the part of you that looks at your life and goes, how did I end up here? I don't like where I'm at. You realize that the result of all of your decisions and choices hasn't necessarily gotten you where you want to go. Or the part of you that recognizes, I'm so glad that I made these choices and I got exactly here. Whichever way it can go. But that's not happening when you're making the decisions. It's when you're making the decisions that the two are fighting for control of how that decision is made. And that's where the little voice may be either the littler of the two, or maybe you going, no, let's not do that. And if the little voice that you're trying to do is not strong enough to convince which one of the two needs to dominate, you lose. So emotionally, I have an aversion. I don't want to do this public thing because I'm white and I'm shy. White being the color from the color code, okay? So I got all these people watching going, he's racist. All right. But if you've got that more introverted personality and you've got an opportunity to go do something that's going to stretch you out there might be an emotional response to go, no, I have no interest in putting myself in that position. But there may be the observer says, I want to grow to that place. I want to overcome this. Now, you're not going to win that battle until you can get the mind, okay, to be overriding the emotion. To do that, you have to have something that I didn't give you yet. I've given it to you in the past. What is the missing element that you need to override anything? All you motivational guys and everything else. What is the driver of all things? Why? I said it by accident almost. I was going to say, why? Why would you do that? So when you're not doing, or you're doing and you shouldn't do, and you're losing the battle is because you haven't given yourself a clear enough, strong enough why you should or shouldn't do. The brain, the mind part, the thinking part, okay, needs a why. The emotional part needs a why. Because you can have a really great sounding why, but have no emotion connected to it, and it's not going to work either. People do stuff for the why, all right? There has to be the reason. You're not walking this out just because you have some emotional thing for a creator being. You have nothing for that. If it wasn't for that, you recognize that the creator being has blessed you, has made you, has a plan for you. See, that's why you love the creator being, not just because he exists. It's about the relationship, okay? Let's be honest. Okay, you don't just sit there going, oh, there's a creator being that exists. I just love him automatically. There would be no reason to do that. The reason that we love our creator is because he has told us in his word about the relationship he wants to have with us. And we want that. We want what that brings and what that entails and what that has all about, what happens if you have that relationship. Can we agree? Because just knowing there's a creator being doesn't generate any emotion, really. It might scare you. I don't know what it might do to you. Especially if you found out that this creator being, and you knew nothing else about him except that there's a creator being. You didn't know there was a book. You didn't know anything about him. You didn't know anything about it. You just know, by the way, there is a being that brought all this into existence and is watching everything. Okay, what's he have in mind? Is he scary? Is it dangerous? Does he have good intentions, bad intentions? I mean, you can have all kinds of thoughts. You're walking this out, putting your life in a whole weird sort of pattern of behavior, losing friendships, losing relationships, because you have a strong enough why to do what you're doing, that it's worth putting at risk these other things. Anything that you want to do that you're struggling to do, or things that you know you need to stop doing that you're struggling to quit, fix the why. Either you haven't really thought about your reason, or your reason is really not strong enough to overcome the urge, the desire to do or not do. And so that's why it's really important if you're doing this kind of internal work, or if you're setting goals. This is like a goal. I want to quit doing something. I want to start doing something. So you write it out. I want to, be more gentle or more kind. I want to be more on time and punctual. I want to be more creative. I don't know, whatever it is that you want to be. I want to stop doing this. I want to start doing that. Then you should write down why. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to make this change? And then if you successfully accomplish what you wanted, you had a strong enough why. If you don't, go back to the why. Don't go back to what it is you want. Maybe there wasn't anything wrong with that, but you didn't do it because your why wasn't strong enough. Okay? You didn't have a strong enough reason. Everybody I know that ever quit smoking, these people I know, they all quit. You know how they did it? They quit. They didn't ease off and patch off and all that. They just quit. And some of you look at me, no, they didn't quit the first time they thought they quit, or the 15th time. But when they actually wanted to quit because they had a strong enough why, they just quit. But the why was the reason. Okay? You can ask Rabbi Tom. He's been off of cigarettes for a good number of years now. When I met him, he was smoking. And you know what? He got a reason to quit. And he didn't wean off. He just quit. My parents did the same thing when I was very, 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 very young, but they had a reason and they quit. You, in your life, anything that you want to quit or start, all you need is a strong enough reason. Not a strong enough reason that other people would think is a good reason. It could be, in my mind, I don't know, I could just look at it as being a dumb reason. It doesn't matter what I think. If it motivates you, that's all that matters. Okay? Because you want it. Okay? People will do, you go to an amusement park, to like the place where all the games are, people will do the absolute dumbest thing to win some little stupid trinket thing. And spend all this money to play whatever, because for whatever reason, they got to have this little thing, this stuffed animal, this little whatever. It's amazing what they'll do for this little thing. You offer them eternal life and they struggle. Kid wants something. You did this when you were a kid, and you knew how, let's say the thing was a lot of money, and at the time, let's assume a lot of money is $100, especially for a little kid, and you're going to save your money, and you're going to save your money, your allowance, and your birthday money, and everything, and you're saving up to get that $100 because you want to buy this thing, which you're only going to play with for 2 days and then forget about anyway. But you want this thing. But you guys can't save any money for anything at this point because you don't want anything bad enough. But when you were a kid, you wanted something bad enough, and you're willing to save up and sacrifice and do extra things. Why did you do it? Because your why was so strong to you. Your desire was so strong. I want it. Now, actually, you probably didn't have a good reason to want it, but you wanted it. Well, guess what? You can want anything with that incredible strength if your why is strong enough. You got to figure out the why. All right. Billy.
We got one from Robert Wyatt. He asked, how can we see the you in someone else if it's actually them or the emotions?
That's above our pay grade. Let's put it that way. Okay. That the only person that needs to figure those things out is the person if you're counseling with them, and the counselor could help you figure it out by asking you the kinds of questions that'll help you sort out what you're doing and why you're doing it, and is the head driving, is the emotions driving. That would be through counseling. But if I'm interacting with someone, I may have a sense or an idea that something may be driving or not. If it seems to be totally, in your mind anyway, remember, it's through your perspective, irrational and illogical, it could be an emotional thing, driving. If it seems to be, a lot of really incredible things are done that other people thought were illogical and irrational, and they were perfectly sane, but because nobody else had done it before, it seemed illogical and irrational. So I would stay away from that, trying to figure out which one is driving in another person. You got enough to keep you busy figuring out who's driving in your own head, okay? Like I said, the only time you might need to know, and by the way, that's through a interactive interplay with the person, is if you're counseling them. To help them, not you, but to help them sort through their struggles, okay? So if I'm counseling you, I do this all the time, all right? And you know that if you've counseled me, because I'll say, well, what's the problem? They say this and this. I said, okay, but why is that a problem? And I keep peeling the layer until I finally get to it, what was driving, the thought or the emotion, and so we could deal with the thing that actually is fueling the problem. But that's only for the structure of counseling, okay? Otherwise, you're sitting in a place you don't belong trying to figure out somebody else's driver, all right? Now, when you're married, when you're in relationships, you need to learn how to adjust to their whatever's driving, because two can't walk together unless they agree. And so if you can't learn to adjust to each other, you're going to have a lot of struggle.
All right, you spoke about how to program, and then you also spoke about locking in. Could you elaborate more on the steps to be taken when we lock it in, but also how to maintain that mindset, like, say, a long work day? Not that any of us don't love what we all do, but it's like a long day at work, you're exhausted. It's easy to slip. It's easy to fall back into another mindset or a negative mindset. So how can we lock that in, or what steps can we take?
Okay, so this is a question of the mechanics of developing habits, okay? You're not going to lock something in the first time you do it, or the 20th time you do it necessarily. So what tools do you need to try to lock things in? It's starting to rain now, so it's getting loud. Okay, so to lock something in, if you have a mindset and a heart, and these things are sort of wrestling with each other, and you've got them where you want them to be, and you're locking it in, they're not going to stay that way unless you are watching over it and maintaining it, okay? It's kind of like you've got everything the way you want, you put it on the stovetop, you set the temperature and everything, and you walk away from the food. Probably not going to go well if you don't check on it and stir it occasionally. A lot of recipes say check on it or stir occasionally, because you have to be aware, is it continuing to go the way you wanted it to, all right? And so I would say that the thing that you need to be doing is schedule yourself away, set reminders on your phone that pop up every hour or two or so many hours to remind you, hey, this is the mindset. You know, we had, I had gone to I would say motivational. I hate to call it motivational speaker, guys. But it was a personal development, life development type of seminar a couple years back. And it was actually very good. Most of them that I've been to have been actually very good, because if I get one idea, I think it's good. Okay? And one of the things I thought was a pretty good idea is he had everybody in the class pick three things that are things that you are not doing every day that you think you need to be doing, like, be patient, be kind, be this, be that, whatever it is, and write those three things in your phone and set the timer so that set 2 or 3 timers so that at 10 in the morning and then at 4 in the afternoon, whatever, a couple of times a day, your alarm goes off with those words on it to remind you this is what you're supposed to be focusing on being that you're not being lately. Okay? And you can put anything in there, but it's the oversight once you lock something in. Think of it this way. You have a project, and you're the project manager, and you get your team together and say, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do it in this order. I want you to use these materials, and then you walk away. What are the odds if you never check in that it's going to go exactly the way you wanted it? Almost zero. But if you come over and check in on it, then you can always catch when it's starting to go a little sideways before it goes badly. And so you don't have to be there and babysit the thing necessarily, but you just got to kind of check in on it. So yes, you're locking something in place, your mindset, right? You're locking it in. But it's not going to stay locked until you get the habit of how you locked it in. So it's a new mindset that's actually one that you can go to.
Praise the Father, and that I'm excited on this upcoming month and this kind of introduction into the new insight and teaching. I think that it's always been part of the foundation that you've taught. I think that myself, as an example, had so much of that foundation that even without your presence, I really had a struggle that going through and really doing all those changes and the hard work on myself that I didn't really think that you were part of that. And the last couple times hearing you talk, I think that you were still a major part of that. And you just didn't, it was really nothing for you to do other than what you've done every week for the last, I know how many years and years and years and years. And then it was me. I had to do it, and I had to figure myself out. But it was the stuff that you taught me that allowed me to do that and to go against what my mind and my heart and everything else at that time was telling me, and listen to what the Father was telling me and what that really strong foundation in the Word that I've gotten here. But I'm just really excited to see you open up and really will bring a lot more people on this walk.
Amen. Amen. Well said. All right, I want to take that into an example. This is the way the Ruach works. I'm not claiming on the Ruach, but the way the Ruach works. The Father, through the Ruach, brings to remembrance, but you had to put it in the first place. Okay? So Craig was saying is that, look, he's heard a lot of things over the years, and it was in there. He might not have been applying it at that point, but at the point where he was ready to apply it, it was able to be brought up. And even though he wasn't necessarily consciously aware at the time where it came from, now, it didn't come from me. It came from above through me, and it's where he got to hear it. But this is the thing that I want you to understand. That's the way the Ruach works. It's able then to bring out of dormancy what's already there so that you can use it when you're ready to use it. And then later, when he started listening to these things, he said, wait a minute. That was what I was going through, and he did teach this, and that's where it all came from. And so I appreciate that, but I want you to just understand that's exactly the way, that's a pattern for the way this always works. See, another piece of this, look, and we could do this like as a 4-day, 8-hour-a-day session, personal development seminar. Okay, there's a saying that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, let's just change that a little bit. I mean, that's actually, I think, a Chinese proverb, but let's go and understand it from a scriptural point of view. When you're ready, the Ruach will bring to your remembrance what you need, but you may not be ready. Or you may not have the stuff there for the Ruach to bring up, but you have to be ready. Okay? and Craig is trying to, he's very excited about this stuff over the last couple, because he went through a tremendous change. He had to go to a place off by himself and go through a lot of that changes. But he yielded to it. And he's trying to also show you that the change was brought out through the things that Abba was able to teach him through the teacher. In this case, me meeting the teacher. And I praise Yah that, again, he was ready, he yielded to it, and then the Ruach brought it up so he could apply it. And that's where all things happen, is when you start to apply stuff. Information is of no use until you do something with it, okay? We talk about, knowledge is power. And the answer is, well, if you understand that knowledge is relational, I guess yes. But if you think of information, okay, information not being applied is not power. So knowing something, having an awareness of it is not power. Having a relationship with it and doing something with it is where the power comes from. Okay, so he had information that then became useful as he applied it, and then he got results. Amen.
I had 3 thoughts as you were talking, so I'll just share all 3. It's just from the beginning to the end. So one thing was, I felt the more of ourselves, the desires and emotions we put down, the more we can become as he sees us. And then what if the door to the kingdom is so narrow, it requires us to completely lay ourselves down in order to enter. And then the last thing is, the thing we need to let go of the most is the very thing we have a death grip on and are unwilling to let go of.
Amen. Well said. Good job. All right.
So as we were studying last week about Korach, I was just thinking about, how you were talking about how the teacher teaches you, but then Craig said something about how he didn't know if he needed a teacher, right? And then he went off and did his own thing, but then he realized he did need a teacher. And I think that's what happens a lot to people, is they all of a sudden arrive at a place where they might think, oh, I've arrived and I can be doing more, or I can go beyond the teacher. But if you really are submitting to Yahweh, you have to go with what the teacher's teaching you, because the teacher is in submission to Yahweh. So Yahweh's telling the teacher what's good for the congregation, and so it might be repetitive, but that's probably because you haven't gotten it down yet. So we need to go at the teacher's pace, because that's what Yahweh wants. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And maybe Korach wasn't thinking that. He was thinking, I've arrived and I can take them further, I can do more, but Yahweh didn't want that. Yahweh wanted Moshe to lead them at his pace. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. I think Korach was dealing with a slightly different thing. He wanted to be the teacher, which is a different thing. Okay. Not everybody that doesn't want a teacher wants to be the teacher. They just don't want a teacher. But I think, in most people's cases, it's not so much that they realize they need a teacher. They realize that what they need comes through Yahweh through a teacher. Okay, you got to make sure we're clear about that. It's not that they need a teacher. Okay, Craig didn't need a teacher. Nobody needed a teacher. They needed what Yahweh was going to provide, and he happens to choose to provide that through teachers. Okay? He doesn't provide it generally just through direct download into everybody. Then there would be no need for teachers. And Paul says there's a need for apostles and teachers and evangelists and prophets and shepherds. So, it's just not the method that he uses. So when you come to recognize that you need something from Yahweh, and that something comes through anointed, appointed teachers, then you have to go find one of those to recognize that you're not just getting it yourself. Okay, so I know that's kind of where you were trying to go, but I just want to make sure it's more clear. Because this can never turn into a cult of personality, and somehow it's about the teacher. Well, it's about the teacher. But he gives those words to human teachers. And so it's about you needing what he had to say. And hopefully you find a person who those are the words that are coming out of their mouth. And that's what you're looking for. But recognizing that you're not going to get it on your own, and you need it to come from a person whose job it is and calling it is to give that information. To put it's not like information like we're talking about these people out there they get these like unique revelations about everything. But someone could take what's already in there and just keep changing the approach to it so that it finally gets to a place where you understand it. How can I give you a different way of wording it and a different example? See, somebody pointed out to me the other day how much they appreciated that, I don't just give one example, sometimes 3 or 4 different examples of something, because I don't know which one you're going to, click with, which one is going to resonate with you, okay? And so I've learned over the years as a communicator that since I don't get to, if I'm sitting with you one-on-one, I can see in your body language if you received the way I intended what I said. And then if the answer is yes, I just keep going forward. If the answer is no, I try a different approach. But since I don't know with all of you, I'll give you 3 or 4 approaches up front, hoping that one of them works, And if the first one worked, you're not going to be bored necessarily with the other 2 or 3 anyway, but at least I'm trying to give a way to do that. But what my wife, I think, is trying to say is that, we can get to the point where we think that we don't need to receive from anywhere else. Because after all, Korach did say, well, you're not the only, set apart one. We're all set apart. He could talk to us. Aaron and Miriam said this directly to Moses. Well, Yahweh talks to us. No, not the way, Yahweh said, not the way I talk to Moses. Well, you know what? I think that's the same thing with teachers. He doesn't talk to you the same way. I'm saying he doesn't talk to you. He just doesn't talk to you the same way that he talks to the teachers. Okay? It's just different. And so, can we accept that reality? That's the struggle. And that's where we have that part of the mind is, whichever, your thought may not like it, your heart may not like it. Okay? Intellectually, you may just think that that's not what Scripture says. Or your emotion says, I don't like the idea that I have to get anything through that guy. And by the way, I didn't really say this because it complicates it too much, but each one can manipulate the other. Okay? You really don't like hearing from this guy, so therefore you're going to intellectually decide that's not what Scripture says. Or you already don't believe it's what Scripture says, so now you're emotionally going to justify and feel a certain way. I mean, it can go either way. Again, whichever one is stronger will manipulate the other one. And I don't want you to ever think that the head is always right and the heart's the one that's wrong. Now, sometimes we have wrong thoughts. Okay? And sometimes we have really right emotions, but the thoughts are wrong, and the emotions get overridden because the thought was stronger, even though it was a wrong thought. All right, so let's go ahead and close in prayer. I'll close us in prayer. No? Agnes doesn't want us to end. Okay, Father, we come before you. And Father, we really appreciate at this Rosh Chodesh, this new moon, that we can take the time to focus and refocus our minds and our mindsets on the above, on you, on what you have for us to do for this journey and our transformation from what we are into what you are. And so, Father, let us be encouraged that we can get to where you want us to be from where we are right now if we apply the things that you teach us through your word, through your teachers, and we put them in our lives and walk them out in the effort to transform into Yeshua-like beings. So, Father, we want to thank you for your patience and your love and your compassion and your mercy as we go forward and journey through the month Harivi'i in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Together we say, Amen, Amen, Amen. All right.